Homeless teen saves. Mysterious old man discovers he's linked to Wall Street. Welcome, dear viewers, to a tale that shatters assumptions and challenges fate. Prepare to embark on a journey of loyalty, mystery, and startling twists. Our story begins with a homeless teen who extends a helping hand to a stranger in desperate need, only to discover that this fragile old man hides more secrets than anyone could imagine. Each new turn unearths layers of hidden danger, unexpected alliances, and shocking revelations about New York's elite circles tied to Wall Street. Promises will be broken, destinies will collide, and a moment of karmic retribution will seal everyone's fate. Stay with us until the end, for this story will take you where you never expected to go. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. A chill wind blew through the darkened alley on New York's Lower East Side, its narrow passage illuminated by a single, flickering street lamp. 17-year-old Tyler huddled beneath a tattered blanket near an overflowing dumpster, determined not to be crushed by the circumstances life had thrown at him. Ever since his mother died in an unexplainable fire 6 months ago, he'd found himself drifting no home, no extended family to claim him, and only the ghosts of memories for comfort. By day, he searched for scraps of food and odd jobs. By night, he sheltered in doorways and alleyways. On this particular evening, he heard a faint groan echo against the wet brick walls. Heart pounding, Tyler stood and shuffled forward. At first, he thought perhaps a stray animal or another homeless person had stumbled. But then he saw him, an elderly man, pale and trembling, leaning against a stack of busted crates. The old man's pinstriped suit, though shabby, hinted at a more affluent past, suggesting he wasn't a typical transient. A battered leather briefcase sat beside him, half open, revealing stacks of yellow documents and scribbled notes. Tyler crouched beside him, fighting the urge to flee. The old man looked half delirious, eyes fluttering in a hazy confusion. "Sir?" Tyler whispered, uncertain. He pressed 2 fingers to the man's neck, as he'd seen medical professionals do on television. A weak but persistent pulse met his touch. Relief washed over Tyler, yet dread coiled in his stomach. This man needed help. In a split second, Tyler made a decision. Carefully, he hoisted the man's arm around his shoulder, lifting him to his feet. Through slurred words, the old man murmured something about betrayal and Wall Street. Tyler's brows knitted. The words seemed out of place in this grimy alley, like a single, polished gem buried in gravel. With resolve, Tyler led the man out of the dark passage, determined to guide him somewhere safe, unaware. This chance encounter would spark a journey that would unearth unimaginable secrets and thrust him into the hidden corridors of power. Finding a place for the old man to rest was an immediate challenge. Homeless shelters were bursting at the seams, and hospitals demanded insurance or identification things the old man didn't seem to possess. Instead, Tyler navigated the city's labyrinth of side streets until he reached an abandoned building off Canal Street. It was rumored that a demolition crew would reduce it to rubble any day, but tonight it offered sanctuary from the bite of the cold. Tyler found a dry corner behind splintered furniture and carefully laid the man down, rolling up his own ragged coat as a makeshift pillow. Without hesitation, he removed the battered briefcase from the old man's frail grip. The old man's eyes flickered open for a moment, a flare of panic shifting across his features until Tyler spoke. "I'm just setting it aside so you can rest. I promise I'm not stealing anything." The tension in the old man's face eased. After a moment, he nodded, his gaze drifting into a half-conscious stare. At first, Tyler was tempted to crack open the briefcase to see what was so important that the old man refused to let go. Yet something about the man's vulnerability and trembling determination made Tyler pause. He placed the case beside him, deciding his curiosity could wait. Instead, Tyler raced out to the bodega around the corner, using the last of his meager funds to buy water and a small packet of painkillers. When he returned, the old man was whispering feverishly, sweat beading on his forehead. Tyler trickled water between the man's cracked lips and offered 2 tablets. "You saved me," the man rasped, voice shaky. "I had nowhere." His sentence trailed off. Confusion, gratitude, and a trace of guarded fear mingled in his eyes. Tyler stayed silent, uncertain how to respond, and gently pressed a damp cloth to the man's brow. In the silence, each passing minute felt electric, laden with unspoken truths. It never occurred to Tyler that beneath the old man's weary demeanor lay a secret that would shake the very foundations of the city. When dawn broke, thin beams of sunlight pierced through the boarded windows, casting eerie stripes along the dusty floor. Tyler woke to the sound of the old man's ragged breathing, relieved to find he was still alive. For a moment, Tyler recalled his mother's final days of battling an unknown illness, days when he'd felt utterly powerless. But here, with a stranger whose name he didn't even know, he felt a spark of control. He could help him, even if in a small way. The old man opened his eyes. They were a startling shade of pale blue, filled with both despair and grit. "I'm Richard," he managed. Tyler nodded and introduced himself, his voice quivering. He hadn't spoken his own name in conversation for weeks. Richard's gaze drifted to his briefcase, lying beside him like a silent sentinel. With trembling fingers, the old man opened it and revealed a cluster of documents. Tyler only caught glimpses, seals from the New York Stock Exchange, names like Goldman Sachs in bold print, and scribbled notes detailing transactions that looked suspiciously massive. Richard explained in halting words that he'd once been a consultant working for several high-powered finance companies. "I was on the inside," he said, voice cracking with regret. "Those who think they rule the world from Wall Street, they have no mercy." Slowly, he recounted how he'd discovered a massive corruption scheme orchestrated by a circle of executives who swapped insider information to manipulate stock prices. "Billions," he muttered, shifting hands in the blink of an eye. An unsettling tension settled over Tyler. He was a nobody, a teen scrounging for scraps. What could he possibly have to do with these monstrous corporate entities? Yet he couldn't shake the sense that fate had landed him here, that Richard's revelations might serve a deeper purpose than just a cautionary tale. Outside, the city hummed with indifference, but within Tyler, a fierce spark ignited. He'd always dreamed of justice for himself, for his mother, for all the invisible people in the world. And now, a door he never knew existed had swung open. As Richard's energy returned, he revealed more. The documents in his briefcase weren't mere evidence. They were his ticket to redemption or destruction. "I tried to blow the whistle on them," he confided, "but they threatened me." He paused, face etched with fear. "They threatened everyone I ever cared about." According to Richard, several top figures, men who appeared on the covers of Forbes and the Wall Street Journal, had conspired to bury him in financial ruin. When that didn't work, they resorted to more brutal means. "I was beaten, left for dead, and told to keep silent if I valued my life." Tyler shuddered. The idea that these polished titans could stoop to such violence tore at his last illusions about the world's fairness. Without meaning to, he whispered, "Why not just run?" Richard's expression was haunted as he recounted how he had indeed tried to escape, to vanish in the system, but found every path blocked. Bank accounts frozen, acquaintances coerced or paid off, safe houses compromised. He concluded that the only way to truly end the nightmare was to expose the entire network in an official capacity. "I have a contact at the Securities and Exchange Commission," he said, "but they don't trust me. The burden of proof is too high." With a trembling hand, Richard traced the edges of a stack of files, each neatly labeled. "If I can just get these documents to someone who will take them seriously, someone who can't be bought or intimidated." He swallowed hard, his eyes darting to Tyler with an almost childlike plea. Tyler blinked, uncertain why the old man might place such hope in him, an ordinary teen who couldn't afford more than a day-old loaf of bread. Yet Tyler felt something akin to a moral gravity pulling him in. If not him, then who? If not now, then when? He nodded, and the unspoken pact set a hush over the room. "I'll help," Tyler finally said. They had no strategy, only the weight of dire secrets and an unwavering sense of justice. But in that moment, neither realized just how deep the rabbit hole would go, or the lengths to which powerful forces would reach to keep those secrets buried. Day by day, Richard regained enough strength to walk short distances. With caution, Tyler led him through side streets to avoid the prying eyes of corporate henchmen who might be searching. Tyler had no illusions about how ruthless the world could be. He'd faced cruelty on the streets often enough, but the scale of potential danger now was mind-boggling. He imagined men in tailored suits peering out of black SUVs, scanning every alley for a sign of Richard. The idea that a random homeless teen could outmaneuver such formidable forces felt almost laughable. Yet the gravity of Richard's ordeal spurred Tyler onward. They decided that their first step should be to verify the authenticity of the documents. An acquaintance of Tyler's, a teenage hacker named Jonas, had once bragged about tapping into secure databases for fun. Tyler found Jonas in a shabby basement arcade, sipping stale soda while obliterating digital enemies on a flickering screen. Jonas's eyes went wide when he saw the faint scars on Richard's face and the thick stack of confidential paperwork. As Jonas booted up his computer, an undercurrent of tension coursed through the small group. If any of these documents were fake, or if the entire fiasco turned out to be a hoax, Tyler would be risking everything for nothing. But line by line, Jonas confirmed that the records were legitimate. He identified real account numbers, high-level email threads referencing stock manipulation, suspicious overseas wire transfers, and even correspondences with known executives at places like Goldman Sachs. Jonas's eyes widened as he scrolled. "This is nuclear," he whispered. "You realize these people can disappear entire families with a phone call." Tyler's stomach tightened, and he saw Richard's hands tremble again, but their determination hardened. After Jonas carefully copied the digital evidence onto multiple secure drives, Richard insisted they needed a plan to get this information to the right authorities before the wrong people silenced them for good. So they hatched a scheme: find Richard's SEC contact, deliver the data in person, and vanish into protective custody. Yet, even the best of plans can unravel in the face of secrets so potent they might topple giants. Under the veil of an overcast sky, Tyler and Richard ventured to Midtown to meet the SEC contact. Richard claimed to know a junior investigator named Maria Delgado. She had a reputation for integrity and a stubborn refusal to succumb to pressure. But as they navigated the bustling streets, weaving among tourists and business people, an eerie sensation crept over Tyler, like invisible eyes tracking their every move. Once, he glimpsed a sleek black sedan parked along the curb, its windows tinted too dark for city regulations. A flicker of movement inside, and Tyler felt certain someone was watching. They entered a modest cafe near the corner of Lexington and 45th, taking a table by the window. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Finally, a woman in a crisp navy suit stepped in. Short in stature, but exuding quiet authority, she approached with caution. "Richard," she greeted, her tone grim. She eyed Tyler warily before extending a polite nod. No sooner did they begin discussing the documents in hushed tones than the cafe door swung open. A man in a heavy coat scanned the room, exuding a menacing aura. Without a word, he approached Maria's table. She froze, her eyes narrowing. The intruder slammed down a folded piece of paper, a restraining order. From the look of it, then flashed a silver badge. "Maria Delgado," he began in a voice dripping with intimidation, "step away from your unauthorized contact. We have reason to believe you're interfering in a federal investigation." Tyler's heart hammered. In an instant, Maria discreetly slid a business card toward him, then rose to confront the man. Richard clutched Tyler's arm, muttering, "Run!" The man glared, focusing on Tyler and Richard, but before he could speak, Maria blocked his path. They dashed out into the street, weaving through pedestrians. Shouts trailed behind them. As Tyler and Richard disappeared into the chaos, Tyler caught a glimpse of Maria, forcing the man's attention away from them. Whoever this agent was, it was clear he was more interested in seizing the evidence than protecting any whistleblowers. The precarious alliance had just become more complex and far more lethal. Panting and hearts pounding, Tyler and Richard slipped down a maze of subway tunnels, eventually boarding a train heading south. During the jostling ride, Tyler fumbled with the business card Maria had given him. On the back was a handwritten note: "Trust no one but me. Find me at 233 Hudson Loft." He looked to Richard, whose face was ashen, eyes filled with the knowledge that their best chance at legal support was under attack from within. They resurfaced in a less glamorous part of Manhattan, creeping down side streets until they arrived at a deteriorating industrial building marked 233. The ground-level security was minimal, a single battered lock on a side door. Inside, dusty corridors stretched in dim light. Tyler led Richard up a rusty staircase, guided only by the address scrawled on the card. They found a loft door discreetly labeled with Maria's initials, MD. Inside the loft, they expected to see the typical decor of an office or safe house. Instead, they were greeted by an unexpectedly modern surveillance setup, a bank of monitors covering multiple angles of city streets and high-rise entrances. Maria Delgado stepped from the shadows, wearing a look of both relief and anger. "They're on to me," she said quietly. "Certain elements within the sec are compromised, just as I feared. I had to set up a decoy, a personal safe space." Richard handed over the precious documents. Maria's face blanched when she realized the scope of what they had. "If this is made public," she breathed, "it could bring down half of Wall Street's power players." She sank into a battered swivel chair, scanning each page. Then she shut her eyes, as if absorbing the immense risk. "We have to be strategic, go to the press, but at the right moment. The FBI could be an option, but we must find an agent with a spotless record." In the silence that followed, Tyler's pulse echoed in his ears. The intimidation and violence they'd witnessed were just the beginning. He wondered if he'd already stumbled too far into a game where pawns rarely survived. But the memory of sleeping on cold sidewalks steeled his resolve. Something big was happening, and if no one else had the courage to fight, he would. The following days turned into a whirlwind of clandestine meetings and coded phone calls. Under Maria's guidance, Tyler and Richard found themselves on the run more than ever. Each time they changed locations, sleeping in yet another abandoned building or vacant motel, Tyler struggled to keep the fear at bay. Even though he'd learned resilience on the streets, this was another level entirely, a cat-and-mouse struggle involving the elite powers of Manhattan. The shadows on every corner might be watchers, the hum of every passing car a potential threat. Maria set out to vet an FBI contact she believed to be uncorrupted, Special Agent James Holloway, known for exposing organized crime in the city. Through carefully orchestrated channels, Maria delivered a teaser of the documents to Holloway, gauging his reaction. If he proved reliable, they'd arrange a clandestine meeting to hand over the rest. Yet, as they waited, other forces were already converging. A formidable hedge fund manager named Eleanor Vanpelt, infamous for her cunning deals, had caught wind of the whistleblower's survival. Through her extensive network, she learned that Richard possessed damning evidence that could implicate her firm. Vanpelt was no stranger to high-stakes manipulation. Rumor said she'd orchestrated corporate sabotage and hush deals for years. Now, she dispatched her associates, both legal and otherwise, to retrieve the files at any cost. In a dilapidated motel room in Harlem, Tyler was awakened by the crunch of gravel. Through the window, he saw two silhouettes lurking by a parked sedan. Richard was dozing fitfully on the bed, while Maria, in a corner chair, bolted upright at Tyler's alarm. A sense of dread flooded the room. They grabbed their few belongings, including the copied drives and original documents, and prepared to flee once more. But before they could reach the door, a thunderous thud rattled the walls, and the lock exploded in a hail of splinters. Men in dark coats stormed inside. Tyler barely had time to think. Adrenaline lit up his veins like fire. The intruders moved with methodical precision, mercenaries. By the look of it, their faces hidden by ski masks. One lunged at Maria, knocking her off her feet, while another grabbed at Richard. Tyler's heart hammered. All at once, the teenage survival instincts that had kept him alive on the streets activated. He snatched up a metal lamp and swung it with all his might, connecting with a dull thud against one attacker's arm. The man let out a grunt and momentarily loosened his grip. Maria, though smaller, proved agile. She ducked beneath the next blow and sprang back up, slamming her elbow into the assailant's solar plexus. Across the room, Richard gasped in pain as the third mercenary gripped his arm, prying at the briefcase. Without hesitation, Tyler lunged, hooking one foot around the man's leg to topple him. The briefcase clattered to the floor. In the frenzy, the door swung wide open again, and in stepped yet another presence, this one calm, confident, and chillingly composed. It was Eleanor Vanpelt herself, hair coiffed, wearing a tailored black trench coat and a cool smile that spoke volumes of her arrogance. "Richard," she greeted, her voice smooth as silk. "You should have stayed gone. This fiasco will do no good for anyone." Tyler's grip on the fallen briefcase tightened, heart pounding like a drum in his ears. The mercenaries regrouped behind Vanpelt. "Don't think you can take us all," she sneered. But before any side could make another move, the screaming siren of a police cruiser, drawn by the commotion, tore through the night. Red and blue lights flickered across the dilapidated walls. Panicking, Vanpelt motioned to her men, and they rushed out the busted door with the precision of a well-rehearsed operation. Shaken, Tyler, Maria, and Richard exchanged alarmed glances. The possibility of Vanpelt controlling certain elements of the police force weighed heavily on their minds. However, the immediate threat forced them to flee once again, clutching their precious evidence as their only lifeline. The next day, Maria finally arranged a secret meeting with FBI Special Agent James Holloway in a church basement near the financial district, an unlikely setting for conspiracies of such magnitude. Holloway was tall, with a stern gaze and flecks of grey at his temples, radiating the confidence of a man who'd seen every manner of corruption. Tyler, Richard, and Maria arrived just after dusk. The long, somber pews stretched under dim lights that flickered across stained glass windows. Holloway stood near a small dais, his hands folded. He motioned them into a hidden alcove behind the altar, chosen to avoid prying eyes. The moment felt strangely sacred, as though they were crossing from one realm into another. "This better be good," Holloway began. Maria handed him a flash drive, her voice calm but taut with urgency. "It'll speak for itself," she replied. Holloway plugged the drive into a laptop, scanning the data with furrowed brows. Document after document, transaction after transaction paraded across the screen. The lines of code and letters lit up his face, revealing growing astonishment. He paused. These are top-level correspondences. Executives, board members. My God, I see references to hush payments. Evidence of corporate sabotage. He rubbed his jaw, stepping away from the screen. If this goes public, it could trigger a national scandal. I can't promise your safety. The Bureau itself isn't immune to infiltration, but I can try to expedite witness protection if you hand it over officially. Richard inhaled sharply, shoulders trembling. The thought of disappearing, living under a new identity forever, didn't appeal to him. "I want them held accountable," he whispered. "Too many good people have been harmed." Holloway's gaze softened. "I get it, but there are no guarantees. We have to move fast." Tyler glanced at Maria, then at Holloway. Despite the fear swirling in his gut, he nodded. He'd made a promise to himself, to Richard, to every voiceless soul trodden under the boots of the powerful. "We're in," he said quietly. None of them anticipated the final act, lurking just beyond the church's heavy doors, that would set the stage for the ultimate reckoning. Agent Holloway worked swiftly. Within hours, he mobilized a small but trustworthy task force, determined to keep them off official radars. He secured a safe house for Tyler, Richard, and Maria, a modest apartment near the Brooklyn Bridge. From there, they waited for word on sealed warrants and arrests. But the powerful individuals they threatened weren't idle. Late one evening, while Tyler absently scanned the city skyline from the balcony, he noticed suspicious lights flicker in a building across the street. A tingle of dread washed over him as he recalled all the close calls with Vanpelt's mercenaries and the compromised authorities. When he raised the alarm to Maria, she frowned and contacted Holloway. He agreed to move up the timeline. Arrests would begin at dawn. Dawn arrived. The operation was executed with military precision. Holloway's team fanned out to serve warrants across Manhattan. Tyler nervously checked his phone for updates, while Richard paced the living room. Maria studied encrypted channels, feeding coordinates to the FBI team. One by one, Tyler heard the names of executives who had been taken into custody. Some were from Goldman Sachs, others from unknown but influential hedge funds. But the final target, Eleanor Vanpelt, proved elusive. Holloway's texts indicated she'd evaded arrest. She was last seen entering a black car near the steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Fear gnawed at Tyler, remembering Vanpelt's chilling gaze from the motel room raid. If she stayed free, would any of this truly matter? 40 minutes later, the phone rang. Maria put it on speaker. Holloway's voice thundered through, brimming with controlled triumph. "We've got Vanpelt cornered at a private airfield in Teterboro. She tried to flee by jet. We're moving in." Relief flooded the room, but Tyler noticed Richard's face twisting in anguish. He'd glimpsed too many illusions shattered to celebrate prematurely. Sure enough, shots rang out over the line. Then the call went dead. In that moment, everything stopped. Tyler's mouth went dry. Had Vanpelt turned the tables one last time? Panic erupted in the safe house. Maria tried unsuccessfully to reconnect with Holloway's team, but only static crackled over the line. Richard, voice tight with concern, said they needed to get closer to the situation. Tyler, despite the fear flooding every muscle, agreed. Doing nothing wasn't an option. For all they knew, Holloway's men were pinned down, and crucial evidence might be lost. They rushed downstairs and commandeered a taxi, paying the reluctant driver extra to break a few speed limits. As the city's skyline whirled by, Tyler's thoughts tumbled. Scenes of him rummaging for food on the streets contrasted sharply with this high-stakes chase. He wondered if after all this, he'd finally find a stable life, or if the system would pull him back under. At the private airfield in Teterboro, the taxi halted at a police barricade. Beyond it, dark smoke curled into the sky, sirens wailed, and uniformed officers scurried like ants. With adrenaline surging, Maria flashed her FBI liaison credentials, and the trio sprinted toward the chaos. On the tarmac, they found two black SUVs riddled with bullet holes. Holloway knelt behind a concrete barrier, clutching a shoulder wound. A few of his team lay motionless, while others exchanged gunfire with heavily armed goons near a sleek, idling private jet. Vanpelt's inside, Holloway gasped, pointing to the plane's open hatch. She's barricaded with her personal security. We've got her pinned. Maria crouched beside him, radioing for backup. Tyler and Richard pressed themselves behind a stack of crates, hearts pounding. Tyler was no action hero, but the rage of seeing good people cut down by corporate greed boiled inside him. As the standoff dragged on, a single mercenary tried to slip through the chaos, aiming for an escape route. Tyler glimpsed a black case in the man's hand, likely containing data or something equally crucial to Vanpelt's final plan. Without thinking, Tyler darted out, throwing a chunk of debris to distract the guard. The man whirled, firing a shot that whizzed past Tyler's ear. Terrified but resolute, Tyler ducked, then hurled himself forward with every ounce of energy he had. A violent struggle ensued. Tyler wrestled the mercenary for the black case, while bullets ricocheted off the asphalt. Finally, with a twist and a desperate kick, Tyler wrenched the case away. The mercenary retaliated with a savage blow, sending Tyler sprawling. Pain flared across his back as he hit the ground. Before the mercenary could reclaim the case, a single gunshot cracked the air. The man clutched his leg and collapsed, howling in agony. Tyler looked up to see Richard standing there, trembling, holding a small revolver, one of Holloway's spares. Richard's face was a mask of horror at what he'd done, but also relief that Tyler was alive. As sirens wailed in the distance, Tyler grabbed the black case and scrambled back behind cover. He fumbled it open, expecting more documents or perhaps bundles of illicit cash. Instead, he found a sophisticated portable drive blinking with a red light. A hush fell over them. Maria rushed over, eyes wide. "What's that?" Tyler lifted it carefully. "Some kind of data storage," he replied, voice quavering. "Might be a backup of everything Vanpelt and her associates tried to hide." Maria's jaw clenched. If they secured it, they could confirm not just the crimes already known, but possibly unravel a global web of conspiracy. Meanwhile, Holloway's backup finally arrived, SWAT vehicles screeching onto the tarmac. Tear gas canisters were fired, followed by tactical officers moving in tight formation. The gunfire intensified. Then, with a sudden whoosh, the engines of Vanpelt's jet roared to life. Like a cornered beast, the pilot was preparing to make a final desperate escape. Richard and Tyler exchanged glances. Their hearts pounded with the understanding that if Vanpelt left, the entire operation might collapse. From behind the concrete barrier, they watched as the jet lurched forward, picking up speed. SWAT officers rushed in, but not quickly enough. Maria bit her lip, helpless to stop the plane from barreling down the runway. At the same time, Tyler noticed the blinking red light on the portable drive intensify, as if some hidden signal was being triggered, a terrifying possibility that they had no time to explore. In a daring move, a SWAT marksman leaped from a pursuing vehicle and aimed a high-powered rifle at the plane's nose gear. With expert precision, he fired. Sparks flew as the bullet punctured critical machinery beneath the jet. Vanpelt's pilot lost control. The aircraft veered off the runway, skidding through gravel and grass. Smoke and flames erupted from the damaged landing gear, screeching metal echoing across the airfield. A moment later, the fuselage slammed to a halt and emergency sirens howled. Tyler and Richard gaped at the scene. Police and SWAT officers converged on the smoking jet, weapons drawn. Within minutes, they extracted a bruised but still defiant Eleanor Vanpelt. Her immaculate hair was disheveled, a small cut ran along her temple. Even then, her eyes burned with fury and contempt. "You'll never make any of this stick," she hissed, glaring at Holloway, who was being helped by medics. "I am untouchable. I have friends in high places." But as the FBI task force secured the scene, Tyler realized a sense of finality descending. Helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting the dramatic arrest live across the city. More officers soon retrieved the black case from Tyler's trembling hands. He felt oddly hollow, as though he'd been running on adrenaline for days and now couldn't remember how to stand still. Richard, shoulders slumping, looked on as Vanpelt was cuffed. In her eyes, he saw the lingering threat that even in defeat, her reach might still endanger them. But Maria and Holloway were already relaying orders to preserve and analyze the newly acquired data drive. Vanpelt's empire, they explained, would be dissected piece by piece. The illusions she'd carefully crafted would crumble. As the sun rose over the shattered remains of the plane, Tyler found himself thinking not of triumph, but of his mother. He wondered if she was looking down, guiding him to right these monumental wrongs. He stood in the swirl of dust, sirens, and swirling media drones, trying to comprehend the scale of what he and Richard had just helped accomplish. Yet the final chapter was still unwritten, for justice is never instant. It's a slow, grinding wheel that crushes the guilty eventually. Back in Manhattan, the weeks that followed were both surreal and uncertain. The media exploded with coverage of the scandal, dubbing it the Teterboro takedown, while high-profile arrests sparked a flurry of resignations and stock market tremors. Tyler, Richard, and Maria found themselves hidden under protective custody, moving between secure locations as testimonies were recorded and legal proceedings began. For Tyler, the shift felt monumental. Gone were the days of scrounging for a morsel of bread or a safe place to sleep. Now, he was a key witness, offered resources he'd never imagined: food, shelter, even medical checkups. Yet he struggled to accept this new reality. He'd spent so long trusting no one, harboring the belief that the world was rigged against him, that opening himself to genuine help felt like walking a tightrope without a net. Richard fared no better. Although his vital whistleblowing redeemed him in the eyes of some, he remained haunted by everything he'd lost: reputation, friends, a normal life. "I never wanted to be the hero," he confessed to Tyler late one evening, as they both stared out a window at the city lights. "I just couldn't live with myself if I kept silent." Maria, persistent as ever, navigated the labyrinth of legal formalities, pushing the SEC and the FBI to coordinate a bulletproof case. But the deeper they dug, the more entangled the conspiracies became. Prosecutors found bank trails leading to politicians, philanthropic foundations, and even internationally recognized charities used as laundering fronts. The complexity only reinforced how close they'd come to being swallowed up by these shadows. In the midst of depositions and public outrage, an unexpected phone call arrived from a renowned philanthropic foundation offering Tyler a scholarship. He was bewildered. "Me in school again?" he muttered. But Maria assured him it was legitimate, a direct result of the attention the case had garnered. For the first time in many years, the flicker of a hopeful future blinked on Tyler's horizon. The day of the grand jury hearing dawned cold and bright. Tyler and Richard were escorted to the federal court building in Lower Manhattan. News vans lined the streets, cameras angled at the main steps, capturing every arrival. Protesters held signs demanding justice for the countless people affected by the rampant financial crimes. A hush seemed to hang over the crowd when Tyler emerged from the vehicle, flanked by agents and wearing a borrowed suit that felt stiff and alien on his lanky frame. Inside, the courthouse buzzed with hushed intensity. Vanpelt was brought in through a separate entrance, face pale but eyes razor-sharp. A cadre of defense attorneys hovered around her like vultures. Their strategy was clear: discredit the whistleblowers, question the authenticity of the documents, and bury the proceedings in complex financial jargon. Richard took the stand first. The prosecuting attorney led him through a series of questions about his professional history, his discovery of fraudulent activity, and the threats he endured. He spoke haltingly, voice wavering as he recalled the night he was beaten and left to die in the alley. The defense hammered back, suggesting he was driven by greed or revenge. But Richard remained steadfast, brandishing the tangible evidence that had been painstakingly verified by third-party experts. When it was Tyler's turn, he felt his heart thunder in his chest. The courtroom's gaze pressed down on him like a physical weight. He told his story, the homeless nights, how he stumbled upon Richard in that alley, and the chaos that followed. A hush fell over the room as he described the break-ins, the chase, the final confrontation at the airfield. On cross-examination, one slick defense lawyer tried to frame Tyler as an opportunistic teen looking for fame or a payout. The flash of anger in Tyler's eyes nearly startled the attorney. "I've been homeless most of my life," Tyler said, voice breaking. "I did it because it was right, not for money." His honesty reverberated through the room, leaving no room for doubt. In that moment, a sense of collective empathy seemed to fill the courthouse. Press photographers clicked away, capturing Tyler's raw sincerity. While the trial was far from over, the shift in the air was palpable. The illusions once cast by the wealthy elite were cracking. Even Vanpelt, her expensive legal team fidgeting around her, appeared rattled by the unimpeachable power of truth. Weeks merged into months as the courtroom drama played out, but momentum leaned ever more favorably toward justice. Guilty pleas started rolling in from peripheral players, eager to reduce their own sentences, implicating higher-ups in the process. Vanpelt, cornered, attempted a desperate plea deal, offering to name names and reveal additional hidden crimes. But the weight of her malevolence was too great. Amid the swirling legal storms, Tyler discovered something else blossoming in his life: new friendships. Agents on Holloway's team, previously stoic protectors, slowly warmed to the street-savvy teen. They taught him about discipline, how to read body language, how to calmly diffuse high-stress encounters. Even more astonishing, philanthropic organizations reached out, hoping to assist with housing and education for kids who'd experienced homelessness. For the first time, Tyler felt the anchor of a community that wanted him to succeed, rather than discard him. Richard, too, found cautious optimism. Though the investigation had cost him everything materially, he was no longer a hunted man. He worked alongside Maria and other regulators, designing protocols that would make it harder for such corruption to flourish unseen. While the path to full redemption was long, he no longer walked it alone. One autumn afternoon, Maria took Tyler aside. They stood on a courthouse balcony, the crisp air tugging at their jackets as they looked out at the skyscrapers. "You know," Maria began, "this city might have chewed you up, but you never gave up. Don't let this be the end of your journey." She handed him a brochure for a specialized scholarship program focusing on law and finance ethics. Tyler's eyes widened. The notion that he, a once homeless teen, could one day help prevent the very injustices he had witnessed was beyond anything he dared dream. He clutched the brochure, remembering how a single act of compassion helping a fragile old man in an alley had ignited this entire chain of events. Despite the lingering dangers and the wounds yet to heal, he felt gratitude blooming inside him like never before. The day the jury handed down its verdict was a media spectacle. The courthouse steps overflowed with reporters and onlookers, all waiting for the final word on Vanpelt's fate. Flashbulbs popped incessantly as Vanpelt was led in, face set in a haughty mask. Inside, Tyler, Richard, Maria, and Holloway took their seats, hearts pounding. The four-person stood. We, the jury, find the defendant, Eleanor Vanpelt, guilty on all counts. The words echoed through the courtroom, igniting a frenzy of emotion. Camera shutters clicked wildly, while Vanpelt's defense team sagged under the weight of defeat. She stood, trembling, as the judge enumerated her crimes: conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, obstruction of justice, attempted murder. Each new charge hung in the air like a tolling bell. She'd likely spend the rest of her life behind bars. Outside, a roar went up from protesters who had gathered for months. They sang, held signs high, and wept tears of relief. For those battered by a system that favored the powerful, this moment felt like the first taste of real vindication. Tyler leaned on a railing, exhaling the breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Richard, standing behind him, placed a hand on his shoulder. The old man's eyes brimmed with tears. "It's done," Richard said quietly, "at least for now." As the crowd surged, reporters jammed microphones in front of Tyler's face. They asked how a homeless teen had become the hero of a story that rattled Wall Street. Tyler was lost for words. Finally, he managed to say, "I just did what anyone should do if they have a heart." His words spread through media outlets, capturing the essence of an unexpected alliance that toppled giants. Later that evening, in a subdued gathering at Maria's loft, they reflected on the enormous changes set in motion. Civil lawsuits would follow, more arrests might come, but the worst villains had been unmasked and held accountable. The sense of deep, hard-fought justice filled the small group with a warmth they'd never known before. The ripple effect of the trial impacted more than just the corporate realm. Non-profit organizations stepped forward to propose legislation aimed at protecting whistleblowers, while mainstream media dissected the case, educating the public on how such corruption festers in shadows. Tyler, who had once seen Manhattan as a labyrinth of despair, now found it alive with the promise of renewal. One crisp morning, Tyler accompanied Richard to a small memorial garden near the East River. They hadn't spoken much about it, but Tyler sensed Richard needed closure. Soft sunlight danced on the water as they placed flowers by a marble plaque. Richard whispered that it was dedicated to friends he'd lost, some to violence, others to betrayal. He spoke haltingly about a fellow whistleblower who'd mysteriously vanished. "They deserve to be remembered," he said. And Tyler nodded, thinking about his own mother. Soon after, Tyler used part of his scholarship funds to move into a modest dormitory at a community college. The transition was jarring, no longer searching dumpsters for dinner. He found himself studying at the library past midnight. The swirl of new possibilities stirred excitement and anxiety. On campus, he occasionally recounted his experiences to classmates, leaving them wide-eyed. But mostly, he focused on forging a future he could shape, rather than one shaped by dire circumstances. Meanwhile, Richard, under a discreet arrangement by the FBI, secured a job advising financial compliance boards. His re-entry into the working world wasn't easy. He still bore the scars of betrayal. Yet every time he watched the evening news announcing more reforms sparked by his testimony, a sense of grim satisfaction soothed him. In the background, some cynics claimed the convictions were mere scapegoats, that the system itself would revert to old ways. But for Tyler, Richard, Maria, and Holloway, the victory was real. They'd proven that even the mightiest walls could crumble when truth was given a champion, and the once impenetrable fortress of corporate intimidation had cracked wide open. Weeks later, Tyler sat in a hushed lecture hall, absorbed in a seminar about civic ethics. A professor mentioned historical whistleblowers, people who risked everything to illuminate the darkness. Images flashed on a projection screen, including those of real figures from history, like Daniel Ellsberg with the Pentagon Papers and Sharon Watkins at Enron. Tyler felt a shiver run through him. He was part of that lineage now, albeit in a smaller capacity. Still, he couldn't stop thinking about the chain reaction triggered by a single act of compassion in a lonely alley. That fateful night, he never dreamed it would catapult him into a web of intrigue, much less usher in tangible change. He gazed at his classmates, who were intent on the professor's lecture. Did they suspect a living example of such a story sat right among them? Probably not. It felt almost surreal. After class, Tyler checked his phone. A text from Maria blinked at City Hall. "Ceremony tomorrow. Be there if you can." Intrigued, Tyler hurried across the bustling campus, hopped on a subway, and arrived at City Hall the next day. He found a modest gathering of officials, activists, members of the press assembled on the steps. Holloway stood in formal attire, looking both official and slightly uncomfortable. And there was Richard, leaning on his cane. In a speech that lasted only a few minutes, the mayor thanked them for shining a light on hidden corners of finance, for having courage when others were silent. Tyler felt his face redden as applause broke out. All the accolades in truth made him uneasy. He'd never craved recognition. Yet seeing a certificate of civic honor handed to him felt like proof that his worth wasn't defined by his struggles. The applause died down, replaced by a moment of reflection. Tyler walked away from City Hall, certain that his journey wasn't over. But he finally stood on a path paved by hope, dignity, and the knowledge that a single action, a small flame in a dark alley, could illuminate an entire city. As the seasons changed, Tyler settled into a routine that might seem mundane to anyone else's classes. Study sessions, part-time work at a local bookstore. Yet every routine moment felt like a blessing compared to his former life. He relished each sunrise from his small dorm window, each friendly exchange in the campus dining hall. A newfound stability, something he once believed unattainable, now cradled him. Richard, in the meantime, embarked on a quieter mission. He poured his modest pension into philanthropic efforts aimed at homeless youth, determined to protect others from the fate he nearly suffered. The name Richard Neal Foundation for Shelter and Justice soon appeared on flyers around the city, a testament to rebuilding in the aftermath of destruction. Tyler volunteered there on weekends, sometimes sharing his story with wide-eyed teens who felt trapped in an endless cycle of despair. Maria remained in the SEC, stepping into a more prominent role, while her new responsibilities demanded constant vigilance, especially as old players in finance tried to reclaim their seats of power. She carried herself with unwavering resolve. She'd tasted the price of truth, and it only made her convictions stronger. And what of the higher-ups who'd once seemed immune to consequences? Many still faced trials and public scorn. Some were quietly stripped of their fortunes or barred from holding corporate positions ever again. A handful snaked their way through legal loopholes, but the stigma of their wrongdoing chased them. Karmic retribution, it seemed, came not always in dramatic fanfare, but in the slow erosion of pride and influence. On a crisp winter evening, Tyler and Richard stood atop the Brooklyn Bridge promenade, gazing at the city lights. The biting wind reminded them of the night they first met. All was calmer now, though the world still harbored injustices. Richard turned to Tyler and said, "Never stop listening for that voice telling you to do what's right. It might change everything." Tyler nodded, feeling each illuminated skyscraper as a testament to the power of perseverance. In the end, the story was never about a homeless teen alone, nor solely about a mysterious old man fleeing Wall Street's wrath. It was about how one small, humane decision can spark an uprising of conscience, uniting unlikely allies. Tyler's action had saved Richard from dying in an alley, but Richard's vulnerability also rescued Tyler from the shadows of obscurity. Together, with Maria's fierce sense of justice and Holloway's steadfast dedication, they set in motion a chain of events that shook the pillars of corporate greed. The city roared onward, oblivious to most of its unsung heroes. But for Tyler, a sense of fulfillment settled in the place where sorrow once lodged. Sometimes, late at night, memories of the darkest streets he'd slept on would revisit him. He'd recall the fear of each footstep echoing down an alley, the gnawing hunger that had nearly stripped him of humanity. But then he'd remember the spark of light he gave to a stranger, and how that light became a beacon guiding him toward hope. New York still hummed with hustle, possibility, and corruption. The difference now was that Tyler no longer felt powerless. He saw a horizon of possibilities: law school, public advocacy, or perhaps forming alliances with activists who demanded better for the marginalized. Each road was fraught with challenges, but his journey thus far had proven that challenges could be overcome, that truth could be wielded like a weapon, and that karmic justice, while slow, eventually arrived. Far from predictable, the path Tyler embarked upon remained alive with new surprises. The fatherly figure of Richard, the unwavering presence of Maria, and the quiet competence of Holloway formed his support network, a found family forged in crisis. And though the future was unwritten, one certainty gleamed: the bond they shared would outlast the darkest schemes, a testament to the enduring power of trust and compassion. Thank you for joining us on this thrilling journey of twists, courage, and karmic reckoning. We witnessed a homeless teen's small act of compassion ignite a life-altering odyssey, uncovering treachery rooted in Wall Street's darkest corridors. Through unshakable alliances and unbreakable faith in truth, the most powerful figures were brought to their knees, proving that justice prevails when courage meets conviction. If this tale stirred your imagination, brought you hope, or reminded you of the strength that lives in each of us, please consider liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue showcasing stories of resilience, bravery, and redemption. Until next time, stay inspired.